So we're already getting an image from somewhere in the phone, we are selecting it, and we have already prepared both the project and a storage account that we created back in Azure. The only thing left to do is to insert or upload that image. So what I'm going to do is, right after setting the source for this image, call a new method that I'm going to create so we can upload the image. And this method is going to be receiving the stream directly. So what we're going to do is pass the selected image file, but already as a stream. So we're going to be calling the getStream method. Now that we are calling this method, of course, we have to create it. Once that I have done this, all I have to do is type Ctrl dot on my keyboard so we can create this new method. And it is going to be created already asking for a stream. It is inside here where we want to connect to that storage account that we created on Azure and upload this stream. So the first thing that we will need is to retrieve the storage account using a connection string. So I am going to navigate back to that storage account on Azure and get that connection string. So I am here on my storage account. And if you remember, inside of the access keys is where we have some connection strings. So from the key 1, I am going to copy this new connection string or this connection string that we have available. And this is the one that I will use back in Visual Studio to connect to this storage account. So back here in the upload image method, I of course don't need to throw any exception. I am going to first get that account. And to be able to do that, we are going to be using a method that is inside of Cloud Storage Account. Of course, to be able to use this class, we need a using directive to one new namespace that was added when we added that Windows Azure.storage package, and use the parse method. This method is going to get a connection string and return that account. So of course we pass the connection string that we just copied. The next thing that we have to do is create a blob client. If you remember, we have created our storage account as a blob account, and it's exactly what we're going to be using to upload images. So I am going to be creating a new variable, which is going to be client. And we are simply going to be calling from the account the create cloud blob client method. So now we have this client, and it is through the client that we will be able to get the container that we have created in the previous lecture. So I am going to create yet another variable, which is going to be container, and is going to be equal to client.getContainerReference. Now the getContainerReference, notice, is going to request a string with the name of the container that we have created. So to this method, I will have to pass the exact same name that I used in the previous lecture to create the container, which in my case was image container. So we get that exact reference. Now, it is a good practice to create the container if it doesn't exist. Of course, this is optional, and if it already exists, nothing is going to happen anyway. But from this container reference, you can call the create if not exist async method, which will effectively create the container named image container or whatever value you pass in here if it doesn't exist. And of course, the reference will be still inside of this container variable. By the way, since we will have to await this async method, this upload image method will have to be async. Now that we have this container, we can start uploading images to it. Now, the first thing that we will have to do is get a blob reference. So the container will have blobs inside of it. And of course, right now we don't have any, so we will have to create them. I will be creating a new blob, which is going to be performed by calling from the container again the getBlob reference. And this is going to also request a string. In here, normally you will pass the name of a file or the ID of the post to which this image is going to be assigned to. But since right now all we have to do is pass some value, you could also get a very unique string, so any image that you upload has a very different name. One way to create a unique name is by calling from GUID, which is a class, the new GUID method. And of course we will have to turn it into a string. This method then is always going to be creating an entirely different string. And this is the string that we will have to pass to this getBlob_reference method. And also we will have to add something like JPEG to the end of it, because this is a JPEG file that we are using. Right now I'm just hard coding it, but if you're getting any different type of file, you will have to add that extension here. Finally, we will create this blob. So right now all we did was get the reference, just like we did with the container. Now we're going to create it. In this case, the blob will probably never exist before we do this. In the case of the container, it could exist first. That is why it is being created only if it doesn't exist. In the case of the blob, the way to create it is to simply upload a stream. So from this reference to the blob, we are going to be uploading from a stream in this case. You could also upload a byte array or a file or text and pass the stream that the upload image is receiving. Of course, since this is an async method, we will have to await it. And that's pretty much it. This is everything that we need to upload the image. Now, just as an extra note, if you want to get the URI, the URL where this image is going to be stored so you can eventually use it, you will be able to do that from this precise blob, accessing the URI property and getting the original string. In fact, I am going to be getting this string as the URL, and I am going to be setting a breakpoint right after this so we can take a look at this URL. I am going to run the project again, and we're going to check if we are successfully uploading the image that we were already selecting. We're going to check that URL, and we're going to navigate back to Azure to evaluate what has happened inside of our storage service. So here I have the application running. I am going to select a picture, and this is automatically going to be uploaded since we are calling the upload image right after setting the source. Now notice that apparently everything has been successful since I have hit this breakpoint, and if I hover over the URL, I can see a URL being set. So I am going to copy this URL and I will navigate to Chrome. I will just paste this URL and notice that the image was immediately downloaded. Now if I open it, notice that indeed it's the image that we have just uploaded. So we have successfully assigned this image. In the case that you wanted to display that image, all you will have to do is set the source of an image SAML element to this string. Now let's find out what happened back in Microsoft Azure. I am here inside of my container that I created previously. And if I select it, notice that now we have an image or a file. And if we select it, we see this URL. That is the exact same URL that we retrieved back in Visual Studio. We see the download method, by the way, and we will see that it's the exact same file. And that will be it. This is everything that we need to do. So we have learned how from Xamarin and from the shared project to get access to an image, or really just take a picture from both Android and iOS. And we have learned how with a storage account that we have created on Azure, we can save all these images and retrieve a URL, and that URL is the one that we could save to a SQL database. So now that you have learned this, I want to challenge you to implement this on an application, maybe the application that we have just built in the previous sections, or a brand new application, and share with us in the discussions what application you have created.